One of them leaned back and looked her up and down like she was part of the menu. "Smile when you walk, sweetheart. Makes it worth the tip." Another snapped his fingers. "What, you deaf? Or just stupid?" Olivia stood there holding the tray, jaw tight, eyes lowered. She didn't flinch, didn't apologize. That only made them louder. "Bet you've done worse for less," one muttered. A phone came out, camera on. "Say something cute for the video." Someone blocked her path. Someone else brushed past her on purpose. She still didn't react. They didn't notice the man in the corner booth, didn't notice the canine's body go rigid, didn't notice the leash tighten. Then Olivia finally looked up. Not scared, not begging. And the Navy SEAL quietly said, "Easy. Stay." The phone slipped from the gangster's hand and hit the floor. If you want to know what happens next, comment below and subscribe before this story finishes. Bring it faster, slut. The word cut through the diner louder than the clatter of plates. It wasn't the first insult of the night, just the one that finally turned heads. Olivia stood at the edge of the booth with a tray balanced on one hand, coffee steaming, jaw set. She didn't look at them. She didn't apologize. She didn't rush. She set the mug down exactly where it belonged and slid the receipt folder beside it, calm as a held breath. They laughed because calm bothered them. One of the men leaned back and looked her up and down like she was part of the decor. "Smile when you walk, sweetheart," he said. "Makes it worth the tip." Another snapped his fingers twice, sharp and impatient. "What, you deaf? Or just stupid?" Olivia shifted her weight. Subtle. Almost nothing. The tray didn't wobble. Her eyes stayed on the tabletop, counting stains, memorizing shapes the way you do when you don't want to be anywhere else. The third man lifted his phone, the camera light blinking on. "Say it again," he said. "Say something cute for the video." Someone's boot slid into the aisle, blocking her path. Someone else brushed past her shoulder on purpose, too close to be an accident. She breathed in through her nose, slow. Out through her mouth, slower. The room felt louder, then strangely quiet, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. Across the diner, a man in a plain jacket sat alone in a corner booth. He hadn't touched his food. At his feet, a large dog lay stretched out, chin on paws, eyes open. The leash rested loose in the man's hand. He watched reflections in the stainless steel counter instead of the table that was making all the noise. Olivia turned to leave. The boot didn't move. "Hey," one of them said, rising just enough to crowd her space. "You're not done yet." Her forearm tightened where his fingers closed around it. Not a grab. Testing pressure, the kind that asked a question without words. She felt the heat of it, the angle of the wrist. The slight tremor that meant he expected compliance. She didn't give it. Somewhere under the table, the dog's ears lifted. The man in the corner tightened his grip on the leash, just a fraction, and said nothing. Olivia finally looked up, not scared, not pleading, measuring. The first hook landed without noise. The way she noticed the man filming didn't center the frame, the way the blocker leaned heavy on his left leg, the way the grabber's thumb floated where it could be bent back if it needed to be. She took it all in the way a medic scans a room. Who's breathing? Who's bleeding? Who's lying? "Bring it faster," the filmer repeated, louder now. "Don't make us wait." Olivia's voice, when she spoke, surprised even her. "Sir," she said, even and flat. "Please move your foot." The word "sir" made them howl. "Listen to her," someone snorted. "She thinks manners matter." The man at her arm squeezed. "You gonna cry, huh?" Second hook. The dog rose to a sit. The sound it made wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. A low vibration rolled out of its chest and stopped short, like a warning wrapped in restraint. Heads turned. The filmer's phone dipped, just a little. The man in the corner didn't look at the table yet. He looked at the dog. He gave a single, quiet command under his breath, not for attack. Not for retreat, for attention. The growl cut off like a switch had been flipped. "Sir," Olivia said again, softer now. "Move your foot." The grabber laughed to cover the flicker of doubt. Or what? Third hook. Memory punched in without warning. Heat. Dust. the smell of antiseptic that never quite masked blood. Olivia's hands moving fast, voice steady, someone screaming her name and then not screaming anymore. She blinked it away. Here was laminate and chrome, not sand and fire. Here was a tray, not a stretcher. The filmer raised the phone again. "Come on," he coaxed. "Say it." A waitress from the next section froze with a pitcher in her hands. A couple at the counter stopped chewing. The room felt like a held note. The man at Olivia's arm shifted his grip, thumb pressing harder, trying to own the moment. That was the mistake. Ownership changes posture. Ownership announces itself. Olivia's free hand came up, not fast, not flashy, and rested on his wrist as if to steady herself. Her fingers found the joint by feel, pressure precise, familiar. She leaned in, just enough to whisper so only he could hear. "Let go." He didn't. She turned his wrist the smallest amount. Not enough to break skin. Enough to steal strength. His breath left him in a sound he couldn't control. He stumbled back, surprised more than hurt, knocking his knee against the booth. The filmer cursed. "Hey!" The dog stood. The man in the corner finally looked up. "Stay," he said, calm and final. The dog stayed, coiled, eyes locked, teeth barely visible now that the lips had lifted. The room broke into whispers. Chairs scraped. Someone reached for a phone that wasn't already out. Olivia stepped back into the aisle, space opening in front of her the way water opens around a stone. She didn't run. She didn't posture. She smoothed the crease in her apron with her thumb and breathed. "Sit down," the man with the dog said, voice level, carrying just enough authority to cut through the noise. "All of you." They didn't recognize him. Not yet. They recognized the tone. One of them laughed again, too loud, and took a step toward Olivia like bravado could fix the math that had just changed. "You don't tell us what to—" The dog took one step forward. No lunge, no bark, just the promise of motion. The man stopped. Sirens wailed somewhere far off, a coincidence or not, impossible to tell. The filmer glanced toward the windows, then back to Olivia, then to the dog. His phone shook in his hand. Olivia felt the shake in herself now, the delayed tremor that comes after restraint. She tucked it away. There would be time for it later. The man with the dog met her eyes for the first time. Recognition flickered, not of her face, but of her stillness, of the way she stood like someone who had learned to be small without being weak. He nodded once, barely. "Ma'am," he said, respectful. "Are you hurt?" "No," Olivia said. It was the truth. The filmer tried to back away, boot catching on the chair leg. The phone slipped, clattered against the tile, and slid to a stop at Olivia's feet, the camera still recording. She looked down at it, and then she looked back up as the dog lowered its head and took another step forward, waiting for the word that hadn't been given yet. The phone lay on the tile between Olivia's shoes, the red dot still blinking in the corner of the screen. Recording. The angle caught the underside of the table, a chair leg, the edge of her apron, not faces, not yet. She nudged it gently with the toe of her sneaker so it stopped spinning. She didn't pick it up. Evidence mattered more when it stayed where it fell. "Sit," the man said again, louder this time. Two of them dropped back into the booth like gravity had suddenly increased. The third stayed standing, eyes darting between the dog and the door. He was the youngest, the one who had laughed last and loudest, the one who still thought momentum could save him. The dog didn't move. It didn't have to. Its presence pressed the air flat. Olivia felt the room watching her now. She hated that part, the way eyes changed when fear replaced contempt. She reached for the coffee pot at the service station and set it down with care, hands steady because she made them steady. The shake would come later. It always did. The man with the dog rose slowly, careful not to trigger the wrong instinct. He moved between tables with a practiced economy, positioning himself so the aisle stayed open and the exits stayed covered. The leash stayed short. The dog tracked the standing man's knees, then his hands, then his eyes. First hook came quietly. The man didn't look like a hero. No uniform, no swagger, just someone who knew where to stand. "You," he said to the standing one. "Hands where I can see them." The man scoffed, then thought better of it and raised his palms halfway. "This is nothing," he said. "She started it." Olivia didn't answer. She watched his breathing. Fast, shallow. He'd already decided on a story. The dog leaned forward, just enough to show teeth. "Sit," the man repeated, softer now. The man sat. Someone at the counter exhaled like they'd been holding it for minutes. A spoon clinked against porcelain. Life crept back in around the edges, tentative. The filmer's phone buzzed on the floor, a notification lighting the screen. Olivia noticed the lock screen photo in the half-second before it dimmed. 3 men with arms around each other, grinning in front of a neon sign. She felt the old anger stir, the kind that asked why it was always someone else's night to ruin. She pushed it down. The man with the dog glanced at the phone, then at Olivia. "Mind if I secure that?" he asked. "Please," she said. He crouched, keeping his body between the dog and the booth, and slid the phone into a napkin without touching the screen. He didn't turn it off. He didn't need to. He stood and set it on the counter in clear view. Second hook arrived with memory, uninvited. The sound of rotors in her ears that weren't there. The smell of grease that wasn't grease. Olivia pressed her tongue to the back of her teeth until the present snapped back into focus. "You okay?" A woman whispered from the next table, eyes wide. Olivia nodded once. It felt like lying. Sirens grew closer now, unmistakable. Someone had called it in after all. Good. Let the system do its job. One of the men tried a smile, thin and oily. "We were joking," he said to the room. "Right? Everybody's so sensitive." The dog's growl returned, low and measured. "Don't," the man with the dog said. "You're making it worse." That earned a glare. "Who are you supposed to be?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Authority isn't a badge. It's a posture. He gave the leash a small tug, and the dog shifted its weight, ready. Olivia stepped in before it tipped. "Sir," she said to the dog's handler, not loud, just enough. "Please." He looked at her again, longer this time. He saw the way she held herself, the way she placed her feet. He nodded. "Stay," he told the dog. The dog stayed. Third hook came when one of the men reached under the table. Everything in Olivia sharpened. "Hands," she said, and there was steel in it now. On the table. The man froze, then lifted his hand slowly, empty. He'd been reaching for nothing or something. It didn't matter. The line had been crossed too many times already. Police lights washed blue across the windows. The door opened and cold air rushed in with boots and radios and a voice calling, "Police! Everybody stay where you are." Relief fluttered and died in Olivia's chest. Relief always carried a price. The officers took in the scene fast. 3 men pinned by fear. A civilian man with a dog standing calm. A waitress centered like the eye of a storm. One officer clocked the dog first and adjusted his stance. "Ma'am," the officer said to Olivia. "Are you injured?" "No," she said again. "Sir," another officer said to the dog's handler, "we're going to need the dog secured." "Of course," he said, and clipped the leash to the leg of the counter, commanding heel. The dog obeyed without protest, eyes never leaving the booth. The men started talking all at once. "She attacked us. He threatened us with that dog." It was just words. The officer raised a hand. One at a time, the filmer tried to lean into the counter. "You can check my phone," he said, a little too quickly. "It'll show everything." The handler gestured to the napkin-wrapped device. "Already preserved." That gave them pause. Olivia stood back, letting the officers do what officers do. She answered questions plainly. She didn't embellish. She didn't minimize. She watched the way one officer's brow furrowed at the word filming, the way another took the phone and sealed it in a bag. A manager hovered, wringing hands, apologizing to everyone and no one. The youngest of the 3 started to cry, quiet at first, then louder when he realized it wasn't working. The oldest cursed him under his breath. Olivia felt the tremor finally arrive, a subtle shaking in her hands she hid by folding napkins. The handler noticed. He moved closer without crowding. "Breathe," he said, barely audible. "You're safe." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Outside, statements were taken under flashing lights. The dog waited, patient, a living reminder of consequence. The men were separated. One tried to stare Olivia down and failed. When it was done, when the noise moved away and the diner began to fill back in, the handler clipped the leash free and turned to Olivia. "Thank you," he said, and she knew he didn't mean for the help. "For what?" she asked. "For not escalating," he said. "For knowing when to stop." She almost laughed. She almost cried. He hesitated, then added, "You were trained." It wasn't a question. She met his eyes. "I was." He nodded, satisfied, and didn't ask for more. The manager offered her a ride home. She declined. She needed the walk. At the door, the handler paused. "If you ever need a witness," he said, "you have one." She watched him leave with the dog at his side, posture easing only once they were outside. She looked down at the clean tile where the phone had been and felt the echo of its weight. If you've ever judged someone by where they stand instead of what they carry, leave a comment that says, "Never judge." As Olivia stepped into the night air, she didn't see the last man glance back from the patrol car, eyes cold with something like promise. And she didn't hear the handler's phone buzz with a message that would pull all of them back into the story before dawn. The night didn't end when the patrol cars pulled away. It never did. It just changed shape. Olivia walked home under streetlights that flickered like tired eyes. The diner's grease and coffee clung to her clothes, familiar and unwelcome. Every sound felt too sharp, the snap of a trash bag in the wind, the hum of a passing engine. She counted steps without meaning to, left, right, left. The rhythm steadied her breathing. She reached her apartment and locked the door twice. Habit. She leaned her forehead against the wood for a second longer than necessary and let the quiet press in. The tremor returned, stronger now, a ripple that started in her fingers and traveled up her arms. She sat on the edge of the couch and pressed her palms together until the shake slowed. First hook slipped in quietly. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at the screen, pulse ticking faster. She didn't answer unknown numbers. She didn't answer numbers at night. She breathed once, then answered anyway. "It's me," the man said, the one from the diner, the handler. His voice was calm, controlled, like a hand on a shoulder. "I hope this isn't too late." "It's not," she said. It was a lie, but a small one. "I wanted to tell you," he continued. "They're not walking away tonight. Charges are being drafted. The phone had more than you saw." Olivia closed her eyes. Relief arrived, thin and fragile. "Thank you." There was a pause. "There's something else." She waited. "They recognized you." Her eyes opened. "From where?" "From how you moved," he said, "and from what you said. Word travels. Quietly." She swallowed. "I didn't give my name." "You didn't have to." The call ended with a promise to check in and a number saved she hoped she wouldn't need. She set the phone face down and stared at the wall where the paint bubbled near the window. Afghanistan pressed at the edges of her thoughts again. The smell of dust, the weight of a pack, the moment when the world narrowed to blood and breath, and a name she still said in her sleep. She showered and let the water run too hot. She scrubbed until her skin burned, until the diner felt far away. When she slept, it came in shards. Morning arrived like a knock she couldn't ignore. At the diner, the manager pulled her aside before the first rush. "You don't have to come in," he said. "Not today." "I'm here," she replied, tying her apron. Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. People watched her more openly now, some with sympathy, some with curiosity. A woman slid a folded note across the counter when Olivia poured her coffee. "Thank you for last night." No signature. Second hook landed with the doorbell. The three men didn't come back, but someone else did. A man in a blazer took a booth by the window, ordered black coffee, and waited. When Olivia passed, he raised a hand, polite. "Ma'am." She stopped. "Yes?" "I'm with the city," he said, producing a card. "We're following up." She nodded and refilled his cup. I'll be with you in a minute." He waited until the rush thinned. They spoke quietly at the end of the counter. He asked what happened. She told him, clean and chronological. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he said, "There's interest." "Interest," she repeated. "From people who prefer things handled quietly," he said. "You understand." "I do," she said, because she did. He hesitated. "The man with the dog, he's been called in." "For what?" "To confirm." She felt the old instinct flare, protective and wary. "Confirm what?" "That you are who you appear to be," he said, and left without another word. The rest of the shift blurred. At closing, Olivia found a message taped beneath the counter. "Back door. Now." Her pulse spiked. She didn't go to the back door. She stepped outside through the front and circled the block. The alley was empty. A mistake, then. Or a test. She slept lightly. At dawn, her phone buzzed again. Third hook came as a name she hadn't heard in years lit the screen. She answered with a breath she didn't know she was holding. "We need to talk," the handler said. "In person." They met in a park where joggers traced predictable loops and children fed ducks. The dog lay at his feet, watchful. He didn't sit. Neither did she. "They're pushing," he said. "Not for you to testify, for you to disappear." Her jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because last night wasn't an isolated thing," he said, "and because you don't fit their story." She laughed once, humorless. "I never do." He nodded toward the dog. He recognized it too, the stillness, the restraint. She looked away. "I left for a reason." "I know," he said gently. "I know about your partner." Her chest tightened. "You don't know what it costs." "I know what it costs to stay," he replied, "and to leave." A silence settled between them, heavy and shared. "They want me back," she said. "Not back," he corrected. "Visible." She shook her head. "I can't." "You already are," he said. They walked once around the pond. The handler outlined what he could. Pressure building, phones ringing, favors called in. Nothing overt, nothing illegal, just gravity. When they parted, he left her with a warning she didn't want. "They'll test you again." The test came sooner than expected. That night, as Olivia locked up the diner, a familiar voice called her name from the shadows. She froze. One of the three stood by the dumpsters, face pale, eyes bright with something sharp. "You thought that was it?" he said softly. "You think dogs scare everyone?" Her body went quiet inside, the way it did before a storm. He smiled. "I know where you live." And from the end of the alley, another shape stepped forward, blocking the light. As Olivia realized the test wasn't over, it had just begun. The alley smelled like wet cardboard and old oil. Olivia felt it before she saw it, the way space tightened when exits narrowed and sound dulled. The man by the dumpsters smiled like he'd practiced it, a thin curve that asked for fear as payment. She didn't give it to him. "I know where you live," he said again, softer now, savoring the words. Olivia set her keys down on the crate beside her, deliberate. The habit came back like muscle memory waking from sleep. Hands free, feet planted, weight balanced. She kept her voice low. "Step back." He laughed and took a half step forward instead. Or what? First hook struck clean and quiet. A shadow moved at the mouth of the alley. The handler stepped into the light, jacket open, posture relaxed in the way only trained people can afford. At his heel, the K9 flowed forward without a sound, body low, eyes locked. The leash stayed loose until it wasn't. "Stop," the handler said. Not loud, certain. The man's smile cracked. He glanced behind him, measuring the space that had vanished. "This ain't your business." "It is now," the handler replied. The K9 advanced one pace and froze. Teeth visible, breath steady, no bark, no lunge. The threat was precision, not noise. The man swore and shifted his weight toward the gap that no longer existed. He raised his hands halfway, then dropped them, trying bravado again. "She assaulted us." Olivia didn't speak. She watched his eyes. He was calculating. He always had been. Second hook arrived as sirens washed blue across the brick, closer than before. Someone else had called it in. Good. Let the record start clean. The man bolted. The handler didn't shout. He didn't need to. He gave a single word and the leash went slack. The K9 moved like a released spring, not to bite, not to maim, but to block. The man hit the pavement hard, momentum stolen, breath punched out of him. The dog pinned him with a shoulder and presence alone, teeth inches from skin, eyes unblinking. The handler closed the distance and secured the wrists with practiced ease. "Stay," he told the dog. The dog stayed. Police arrived to a scene already contained. Commands were given. Cuffs clicked. The man's bravado drained away into the concrete. He tried to speak and stopped when the K9 shifted its gaze. Statements were taken again, this time with an alley's cold honesty. The handler handed over body cam footage. The officers nodded, efficient, respectful. One of them glanced at Olivia and said, "You okay, ma'am?" "I am," she said, and meant it. When it was over, when the lights faded and the night found its shape again, the handler walked her home without asking. The K9 padded at their side, alert but calm. At her door, the handler hesitated. "They'll try quieter next," he said. "Pressure, not threats." She leaned against the frame. "I know." "You don't have to do this alone," he added. "I've been alone before," she said, then softened. "But thank you." Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it brought the past with it, dust, heat, a hand slipping from hers as she pressed and pressed and prayed. She woke before dawn, with tears she wiped away quickly, ashamed of nothing and everything. Morning brought a knock she hadn't expected. Two people stood in the hallway, a woman in a plain suit and a man with a tablet, both wearing faces that promised discretion. "We're here to talk options," the woman said. They sat at the small table. Coffee cooled between them. The words came careful and clean. Protection, relocation, silence. Olivia listened and felt the weight of the offer settle like dust. Third hook slid in when the handler's message buzzed her phone. "They're calling it a pattern." Olivia looked at the woman across from her. "What happens if I say no?" The woman held her gaze. "You'll be visible." The word landed with a thud. That afternoon, Olivia went to the diner. She tied her apron and worked the rush. People watched her differently now. Some with kindness, some with curiosity, a few with resentment. She carried plates and smiles and silence. She did her job. At closing, the manager pulled her aside. "Whatever you decide," he said, "you've got a place here." She nodded, grateful. That night, she met the handler and the K9 at the park again. The ducks scattered as they approached. "I said no," Olivia told him. He studied her face, searching for doubt. "Okay." "I won't disappear," she said. "Not this time." He exhaled, a sound like relief. "Then we'll do it right." The weeks that followed were pressure without spectacle. Interviews conducted quietly, statements corroborated, phones pinged, doors opened. The filmer's device from the diner unlocked a thread that led to others, then more. Patterns emerged like bruises after the adrenaline fades. One morning, Olivia was asked to speak, not to a crowd, not to cameras, but to a room with a long table and names she recognized from old briefings. She told the truth. She didn't grandstand. She didn't soften it either. They listened. The handler waited outside with the K9, who lay with chin on paws, content in vigilance. When Olivia stepped out, the woman in the plain suit met her eyes and nodded. "Thank you," she said. It sounded like an apology and a promise. The diner filled again. Life went on. But something had shifted. People learned the cost of words. They learned the weight of restraint. One evening, as Olivia locked up, a young server lingered by the door. "I want to be strong like you," she said, small and brave. Olivia smiled. "You already are." On a cool night, not long after, the handler stood with her on the sidewalk. "They're closing it," he said. "The cases, the pattern." She let the air out of her lungs. "Good." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and held out a small patch. No unit, no insignia. Just a symbol she knew by heart. She touched it once and shook her head. "Not going back," she said. "I didn't ask you to," he replied. "I asked you to stay." She did. If this story moved you, if you felt the anger, the restraint, the quiet courage, please subscribe. I'm asking you, honestly. These stories matter because people like Olivia exist everywhere, carrying battles you never see. Subscribing tells the algorithm to keep telling them. It tells survivors they aren't alone. If you've watched this far, you're part of it now. Please, subscribe and